But so I think speaking of executions, and that actually works as a decent transition to our first proper review of the week.
Yes.
Glen Powell's Hitman, which, you know, Daniel, I thought we were past this era of video game remakes where they don't honor the actual source material. He doesn't work for an international organization. He has hair. He doesn't even have a barcode on the back of his head.
I know. I know. Just, yeah. It just, man. They,
I, I hate it when they're just ashamed of the source material.
I know. Me too. Yeah. We're joking, by the way. This movie has nothing to do with the Hitman video games.
We have to specify because I mentioned this in our chat, and Daniel actually thought I was serious.
Yeah. Oops.
All right, so Hitman. What's interesting about Hitman is it gets listed as either a 2023 or 2024 movie, depending.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it was released in Venice in 2023, which I guess would be like that one film festival I can't think of the name
Or
of.
yeah, I think it's a Venice Film Festival. That's
Yeah.
what, yeah.
Then it actually dropped in May of this year.
Yeah.
Okay, it had a limited theatrical performance, probably enough for Netflix to try to you know be Oscar eligible.
Yeah. Although I can't see this movie getting any Oscar nods,
No,
if I'm being honest. um,
then actually dropped on Netflix in June.
yeah. Um, but yeah, so Hitman, yeah, as DB mentioned, stars Glenn Powell, who was recently, most people probably saw him in Twisters. He was also in Anyone But You with Sydney Sweeney, and before all of that, he was Hangman in Top Gun Maverick. Um, and the movie was directed by Richard Linklater, who is somebody I'm familiar with, given that I'm originally from Austin, Texas. He's a bit of a well-known commodity there, well-known filmmaker, because a lot of his movies were filmed in Austin. His most famous one being Dazed and Confused. But most of his movies are slice of life, like Dazed and Confused, and these sunrise sunset movies, with Ethan Hawke, and I can't remember the actress's name, where they play the couple, and they go around, and they're just doing couple stuff. Um, Although he also directed School of Rock with Jack Black. Uh, but this movie is very much a Linklater movie.
Yeah, it also has a very small budget, apparently 8.8 million, which, boy, that shows on the screen.
It does, yeah. And they filmed it. It takes place in New Orleans, and it looks like they filmed all of it in New Orleans, because it looks like New Orleans.
It occurs to me that New Orleans is probably a relatively cheap place to film, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
This one is like a very loosely based on a true story.
Yeah. So Glenn Powell plays a guy named Gary Johnson, and the guy in real life, his name was also Gary Johnson, and he's uh, a professor at the University of New Orleans. He teaches philosophy and psychology. He's very nondescript, very kind of
Okay, let's be honest here. As nondescript as somebody who looks like Glen Powell can be.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. 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 He wears he wears very plain looking clothing, including jorts, which I have not seen anybody wearing jorts in a man wearing jorts in like 20 years. um, yeah, and he has two cats named Id and Ego.
Which, man, this movie has such like a super basic understanding of psychology and philosophy that's just kind of felt insulting. Like that's sort of like, oh, good for you. You read the Wikipedia on Freud when you were writing this.
Yeah, yeah. You're you're
Possibly
you're
was right.
borrowing as much as you can from Intro to Psych in college.
Um, so I'm
Yeah.
going to come in right out and just say it. Like I kind of have hostile feelings towards this movie, and I hope over the course of this review to show why.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, so but in addition to being a professor, Gary is works part time with the New Orleans Police Department, basically doing like tech stuff, like like wiretapping and camera stuff and everything. But then one day when they're about to do so the whole thing that they do is he works with a team where like he's got like there's a cop and like two other cops with him, and they have another cop that poses as a hitman, uh, to basically entrap people into you know hiring this hitman to take out somebody that they want to take care of.
Right.
um you know
Which they would go to a point of saying there is no such thing as just like a retail level hitman. Like you know, they don't say this part. This is my editorial, but if you're a crime lord, you probably have somebody you can go to for this type of thing.
yes,
But they
yeah,
are
but
like available to the general public.
right, yeah. Yeah, and of course, there's the seedy part of the internet, the dark web, and people think, oh, you could go to the dark web and hire a hitman. To like the number of hitmen who have been hired from the dark web to kill somebody is zero.
Yes. If you see somebody, they are an FBI agent pretending
Yeah.
to be a hitman.
Yes. Yeah, and that yeah, but that's the crux of it all is that these people think they're taught then this happens in real life. I mean, there was actually a case actually right here in Florida. I want to say it was out in West Palm Beach, where a woman tried to hire a hitman to kill her husband, and the hitman was an undercover cop. Um, but um, but yeah, so they have this whole thing where they set up this little sting operation, and but then the cop who's usually posing as the hitman gets suspended because he's a jerk cop, basically.
Police brutality incident, and
Yeah,
this character is just like such a. This movie feels like it was written in 2020, which
yeah,
may very well have been.
yeah.
Just because it's like
A lot of 2020 stuff going on. Yeah, like
it's very all cops are bastards, and
yeah, cancel. They're talking about cancel culture, and yeah.
yeah,
Um, so they need somebody to pose as the hitman to get the bust. So the only person they think of is Gary, and Gary's just like, "What do you mean? I've never done anything like this. I don't know what to do." And
right. But of course, since he's a psychologist, he he can kind of read people, I guess, and he can figure out what they want him to be.
yeah, and so he goes in, and then he's able to do it. He's able to get the guy to agree to the contract or whatever, and then the guy gets arrested, and then so begins Gary's odyssey of being the quote unquote hitman that is part of entrapping people into contract killings.
Yep. And I honestly, this sort of montage they have at the start with Glenn putting on different outfits, doing silly accents, pretending to be like varying types of hitmen. That's
Yeah,
probably the best part of the movie, even though it's a little bit directionless.
yeah. And hey, Creators Outlet, good to see you, man.
Hey,
Yeah, and one real quick, I also noticed too. Richard Linklater and Glen Powell were credited as the writers, and I think Glen Powell's contribution to the script was creating all of those personas for the different hitman.
I'll say Glenn Powell, great actor. I mean,
Hmm.
I keep remembering him from Top Gun Maverick, but realistically, he didn't actually have a very big role in that movie.
No, he didn't. he was mainly there just to be antagonistic to Brewster. Yeah,
Right, and he wasn't even that very often. Like
yeah.
he felt like he was the new Iceman, but he really wasn't.
No, he was. Yeah, he was very much. Much more of like a not even a secondary character, like tertiary.
But Glenn has enough charisma and effect that I remember that him 2 years later from when I watched it.
Yeah, yeah.
So you get some good scenes of that, and then we introduce the love interest, played by
Oh yeah, I saw that creators outlet. Yeah, Miss Marvel has been removed from. Yeah, heard about that.
oh, has
Uh,
she? Okay.
yeah, moved from Daredevil Born Again. But that show's a mess.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. What was her name? Starts with an A.
Um,
Let me.
Adria Ariona.
Yeah. I don't know if you recognized her or not.
I did not know.
She was the love interest from Morbius.
Oh God, what man? She is. Oh man.
Yeah.
You know what? I can't even say that Morbius was her fault in any way.
No, it wasn't. It was just we all know whose fault that movie was.
Yes, but so she shows up for one of these stings, and she's trying to have a allegedly abusive husband offed, and he is immediately struck by her and decides to talk her out of it.
Yeah.
Um, which of course is seen as slightly suspicious by his police people who don't really function as characters. So their temporary suspicion is not a real impediment to him.
Right. And so then I'm trying to remember what happens after that. I guess she
There
reaches
is a
out to.
big chunk of the movie that's nothing. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it really. There's. Yeah, I mean, it's nothing really. I mean, nothing really interesting happens in this movie until about an hour into it.
yeah, like the movie picks up a little bit at the hour mark because as you know, the early parts of the movie are you introduce him, you have a montage of scenes of him dealing with various people who want cleaning duties from him.
Hmm.
Meets this girl, and and then I forget who initiates it, but they start interacting, and like she thinks that the whole idea of him being a hitman is like weirdly sexy, I guess.
Yeah, which doesn't surprise me given her taste in men.
Considering that she was. Now, what's interesting is that I kind of got the impression that like, the husband is implied to be abusive, but I don't really think there's any signs of it. Like aside from him being kind of belligerent when he runs into her dating Glenn. So,
Yeah. Well, he could have been. He could be like emotionally abusive.
right, right. Like he does seem like he's very unstable,
Yeah.
eh, as seen by the fact that, well, in one scene, he ends up part of the sting operation before he recognizes Glenn and freaks out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and but I kind of just felt like they were like morally equivalent because they, again, like I, this movie was already kind of too long, but I almost felt like we needed like a scene. Actually, maybe okay. So maybe the part of the movie's problem is that are there any scenes where Glenn isn't around really? Because it almost feels like it's written from like a first person perspective almost. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I mean, you do have one scene where the two cops are talking to each other, and he's still listening to their conversation, and you see them in their office. But other than that, yeah, I can't think of really any scenes where he wasn't there.
Right, and even then, if he's listening in, Glenn is perceiving it. So that's kind of interesting, actually. Maybe that's part of the problem is that you can't have a scene where you have the husband and the wife having it out when she comes home from their date or whatever.
Yeah.
Which okay, so we're gonna go full spoiler at this point, but the movie has been out long enough, like for a relatively limited period of time. So we're gonna give a quick, you know, non-spoiler summation. Like, what do
Yeah.
we think of this movie?
Um, I didn't really care for it very much. Like you said, it is. I thought it was too long. I mean, which I know is weird because this movie's just under 2 hours. But I mean, much like another movie I reviewed not too long ago with Bone Tomahawk, you could have cut 20, 30 minutes out of this, and it wouldn't have really affected the story at all.
Yeah, like as much as I like all those montages of him doing the different roles, you probably could have cut a couple of them out.
Yeah. Well, the only one I really liked was when he was doing Patrick Bateman.
Um,
Yeah, but yeah, I I mean, like I said, Richard Linklater. This isn't really like. I mean, it feels like a Richard Linklater movie, but at the same time, it doesn't. Because his bread and butter really is slice of life. It's really just people being people, not really having something like this. Just really doesn't fit with him very well. And I kind of felt the same way about School of Rock. It was a lot of the same way because it just, yeah, yeah, I didn't care for this movie.
yeah, I'm much the same way. I wish it was good. I
Hmm.
wish that I liked it because I like Glenn, um, and I feel like Arita could do a good job with a better script because she like they did have chemistry,
Yeah,
but yeah, just not a recommend. All right,
no,
so
no.
let's get into the spoilers where this movie goes from kind of dull and it was having a hard time holding my attention to me just being kind of enraged at how morally bankrupt this thing became.
Yeah,
Because okay, so Arita was already kind of questionable because she was happy to date an alleged hitman. Now, where where it could be interesting is that, or where I could see it is that she did talk him out of using the services, or excuse me, he did talk her out of using the services. So that, like, if I'm her, that does kind of imply a hidden softness and affection for her. But so, like, the man, as far as you know, kills other people for a living.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and so basically, what happens is they get word that the husband was found dead, had been shot, and they suspect it was like a drug deal gone wrong. Um, and then Glenn goes to see Adriana, and then she confesses to him that yeah, she killed him, and then that's when he just loses his mind, and then he confesses to her that he's not really a hitman, and
Right, when she's like, "Wait, why are you so upset about this?"
yeah,
And then they get menaced by the evil cop from before, who has had a subplot where he's just jealous of all the attention that Glenn is getting for being such a great chameleon.
yeah, yeah, and oh, we forgot to mention too that he actually saw the two of them at a
Oh, right,
like
yeah,
a
right. He knew they were dating.
yeah, yeah. And he's yeah, so he's just really kind of weaseling his way, or slithering his way into screwing things up for Glenn. And then uh and full well that like he knows what is kind of really going on, and just really screwing with Glenn the whole time. And then so they do this whole thing where they start recording, or they wire up Glenn to try to get her to admit to doing it. And then he's typing the messages on the phone saying, "Hey, they're listening in. Play along."
Say you don't know this, say you don't know that.
Yeah.
But of course, the evil cop shows up and he's threatening them. The, I believe he was trying to was he planning to kill them? For like for her insurance money, or was it like was he trying to bribe them or get them to bribe him into silence?
He was trying to get them to trying to bribe him into silence. Yeah, he
That's
wanted he wanted a percentage of it. I think he wanted like half of it or something. I can't
right.
remember. Yeah.
And so now, okay, um, so fair enough. At that point, she drugs him and he passes out,
Yeah.
and then Glenn passes the moral event horizon, as they call it on TV tropes, and proceeds to smother him with a plastic bag.
Yeah. And the guy slowly suffocates to death.
Right, and I kept expecting some sort of twist because that's kind of a horrifying, cold way to off somebody, but no.
Yeah. Yeah, and they kind of come up with the whole scheme of like, well, he was a dirty cop. He was, he
Right.
was a racist. He was a misogynist. Nobody's gonna
Nobody's
miss
gonna
him.
miss him. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll just dump his body in his car, and nobody will ask too many questions. And that's
Yeah.
right. And they get a happy ending with kids, and everything's good because they killed two people who were in their way.
Yeah.
What a wonderful moral for the children,
Yes. Yeah.
or for the adults for that matter.
Yeah.
Like so that turned the movie from being just like low key, this is a TV movie, throw it on the background while you're sorting laundry type thing,
Yeah.
to just being outright despicable in my eyes.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing: she and the husband were in a situation where, like, it was clearly mutually abusive at that point.
Mhm.
Or at the very least, she tried to hire the hitman first.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
generally not good for him
No.
or for
No.
her, I should say. But like at that point, Glenn ultimately ended up thinking with his lower half,
Yes.
and like they had this speech at the end of the movie about how oh, you grow, and basically just it's like implying that, like, the whole time they've been kind of implying that oh, there's no such thing as reality, we are shaped by our experience, yada yada yada. Sounds like the actions of a guilty man who knows he's done wrong and is trying to define his way out of it.
Yeah. 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 He's trying to gaslight his way out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I I'd been recommended this movie. So apparently, I talked with some family members who'd seen it, and they had the same reaction I did. So that's
Well, that's comforting. Yeah.
yes, yeah. So cannot recommend. Just kind of mildly infuriating.
Yes. Yeah. Indeed.